Good.
I'm just shutting down everything else. Shut that down. Okay, I hope that we're now going to be live on the next section of the show. Thank you very much indeed for the Skeptic Thanks show and Live Life and Negation of Fee for giving us that wonderful 2-hour segment. Very entertaining. I wish I could have watched more of it, but I was desperately trying to grapple with some technical issues behind the scenes, so to speak. I also just want to, I know there's some delay, but I don't want to go on too much more without knowing that we are actually live. Oh, we are. Oh, there's nothing worse than hearing your own voice, is there? But yes, we are. We are live, and we're live with two of my favourite people on the internet. And I know I said this last year, and it was sort of like, I think when I rewatched it, it was taken in the wrong way. When I said that you were two of my favourite people that I hadn't met, only on the internet, it's because I wanted to meet you in real life. I think my life would not be fulfilled if I do not meet in real life the wonderful Eugenie Scott, the awesome Potholer54. And I think it's probably time to reveal our mystery guest, who is everyone's favourite. I hate it. This is a person who's not been on YouTube for a while, but he's just been gifted, I think, too much by the gods. Gifted with good looks, with good teeth, with charm, charisma, and everything. Shall we reveal our mystery guest? I have to do this now. Hang on. How do I do this? Yeah, there we go. Our mystery guest is none other than Don Exodus. I suppose we best start with you, Don Exodus.
How's everybody doing?
Where have you been?
Oh, I graduated dental school back in 2011 and moved down to St. Croix, Virgin Islands. And then this past April, I moved from St. Croix over to St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, and I'm working on St. John. So, yeah, I've been around, but I mean, first month, or actually a couple months, I didn't have internet, and then, you know, you're down here meeting people and exploring, and frankly, the last thing I want to do is be inside on my bad computer anyways with no internet or with poor internet quality, so sort of dropped off the radar. But yeah, so it's good to be back.
Okay, that's enough of you.
Well, thank you.
Eugenie.
Yes?
No, Don, you can mute your microphone now. Oh. Eugenie, let's start with you. No, seriously, on a serious note. You are retiring from your position this year, and I only heard about this a few months ago, and it came as a bit of a shock to me because I don't know how you can be replaced. Who's going to be able to fill your shoes once you go?
Well, lots of people. I mean, this job isn't rocket science, believe me. But remember that NCSC has, I mean, other than maybe the first 6 months or so that 20-odd years ago, it's never been just me. I mean, I've always had really great people to work with and a competent staff, and whatever NCSC has accomplished, it's been a group effort. So yes, there's going to be a new executive director of NCSC after the end of the year, but that director is going to step into a very solid staff with really good programs going, and it should be a pretty seamless exchange. I mean, I have no doubt whatsoever about the continuing success of the organization. It's going to be just as powerful and probably even more effective than when I was running it.
Well, I think you're being too modest there. But apart from I'm sure a tidy desk that you'll leave behind you and everything in place, so to speak, what issues do you think your successor is going to have to face. What has changed? What are the new issues that the NCSE is going to have to face?
Well, of course, as you know, we've taken on climate change as well as evolution as topic areas that we try to help teachers cope with. And the climate change program is now taking up pretty close to half of our staff time. We're building in this area. It's an area that's become more active, both on our radar as well as just generally. But you know, in a lot of the legislation that we've been fighting the last couple of years, evolution and climate change are bundled together. So it was a natural thing for us to take this on. I think the challenge for the new director is to kind of maintain the momentum, watch for the new developments, because there always are new developments. As far as the creationism issue is concerned, of course, the issue that we've been dealing with for the last few years, ever since the comparative demise of intelligent design, has been the issue of these academic freedom laws, of bringing creationism in through the back door. It's a much more subtle approach. In terms of the American legal system, it's got a better probability of withstanding legal challenge. There hasn't been a legal challenge yet. Eventually that's going to be the case, and that'll be a major challenge for the new director. But of course, you know, there's the nuts and bolts things as well. Including fundraising, and I do dearly hope that the new director is a whole lot better at fundraising than I am.
But I mean, the way I see it, and perhaps unfairly, I don't know, the NCSE seems to be like the child that stuck his thumb in the dike to stop the floods. Are you actually going to turn the tide? Do you think there is any optimism in that direction, or do you think it's always going to be a sort of like defensive position where you're fighting against religious attempts to introduce education, creationism into education, and that sort of issue? Do you, in your time there, have you seen a change at all? Any optimism?
Yeah,
give us some optimism. It's a charity show.
You know, we've seen huge changes. When we started out back in the late 80s, basically what we were battling is creation science. Now, creation science continues as a movement, and a reasonably popular movement among conservative Christians, but no longer are they trying to get their policies passed by law in the in school districts. I mean, the whole issue of the legality of teaching creationism in the science class is settled, and so they've just totally given up on that front. Then we saw the development of intelligent design, which again had to be tested in the legal system of the United States, and again, fortunately, it was recognized by the courts that this was a form of creationism by our legal system. It's not allowable to advocate religion or to denigrate religion in the public schools, and so teaching intelligent design or creationism or creation science violates the neutrality required in our schools. So that's been another successful development. No longer is there anybody out there.
Are you talking there specifically about the Kitzmiller-Dover case?
Yeah, because Kitzmiller was there was a real finality to Kitzmiller in the sense that the intelligent design proponents no longer are trying to pass regulations or laws that would require the teaching of intelligent design. I mean, that's not 100% true. There's a few little stragglers out there. Every year we get one or two reports, but it's, you know, this is not a big major push. I mean, basically the people who are trying to get intelligent design regulations or laws passed just haven't got the memo, so to speak, and these die pretty quickly. The problem that we're
Well,
having now.
I know I'm terribly sorry to interrupt you a bit. I know we've got other things to do and everything, but let me just on this point. Let me just conclude it in this way, if I may. Looking back at your time at NCSE, what do you think is your major contribution and your major achievement?
Well, I suppose just keeping this shop going for 26 years,
Oh,
considering
you're too
the
modest. Come on,
the difficulty of.
you're too
Hey,
modest.
listen. Most nonprofits die within 5 years. The fact that we are an established organization running on a shoestring is, I think, something that we can take pride in, and I can take satisfaction in. We do good work, as the saying goes. Most of what we do, nobody ever hears about, because it's that one-on-one kind of help that we give to individual teachers or individual school board members. When they call, when they've got a problem, who you're going to call. When they've got a problem, they know where they can come to get good advice and to get help in resolving problems. And an awful lot of what we do is that one-on-one kind of stuff, which obviously doesn't make the newspapers, but it's still very important that there be an organization able to provide that kind of information. Obviously Kitzmiller was a very public kind of issue, and we're extremely happy that Kitzmiller worked out as well as it did. But there have been other legal cases over the years that we have advised upon that have turned out well, and we're happy about those as well. But no, it's a big integrated piece, quite honestly, and we've there are a lot of accomplishments, most of which are individually minor, but collectively are very important.
There are indeed. I don't mean to be disrespectful. We have two other extraordinary guests with us. Let us move on to Potholer. Eugenie mentioned earlier on that climate change was one of the issues that the NCSE had taken on board. Potholer, I think you've got a few comments to make about climate change, haven't you?
Yeah, actually, people talk about my channel as being a channel about climate change, which I find is rather odd. I was actually asked about 2 years ago, I think now, to do something on climate change because I was doing a lot of stuff about junk science. And so I thought, okay, a couple of videos on climate change. It's now turned into 24 altogether, an entire series, mainly because the amount of ignorance out there about the science is quite breathtaking. And also, it has so many parallels to creationism. Eugenie, you probably discovered this as well, but the rationale, the way that people think and the way they argue, the way they cherry pick the data and organize it in a way as to conform to a preconceived conclusion is very much the way that people do it in creationism. And I actually, when I hear arguments from someone against the scientific wisdom on climate change, I say, gosh, that's exactly what creationists say. That's exactly the same argument they use. And I think the whole thing wrapped up in a nutshell is all about how junk science is now being used in popular media to replace real science. So yeah, I'm glad that you're taking the issue up, Eugenie. I think they're very much two sides of the same coin.
I agree. Very, very many similarities in not so much in the personnel involved. There's somewhat of an overlap. Many creationists also are climate change deniers, but most of the climate change deniers are really a different population. But they use very much the same kinds of techniques and the same approaches, like you were saying. So yeah, we see a lot of parallels.
And interestingly enough, geographically, I think if you were to take polls, I think probably the Bible Belt would be very much against the science of climate change. Europe, I think, is much more conforming to the accepted science. I think these parallels, if you look at the geographic distribution, are also very much the same.
Yeah, the places where you find climate change being denied most vigorously is the United States and Australia. both, of course, where you have a lot of influence from extractive industries, coal, oil, gas, etc. So, yeah, it's an
By the
interesting
way,
system.
I have to add something here because I never use the word denier. I always say that if you're going to deny something, you have to be denying something that's an absolute truth, and there are no absolute truths in science. I tend to use the term, well, I did use the term conspiracy theorist because a lot of people have said, well, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I thought, okay, well, if you are, that's fine, that's what I'll call you. They believe there's a conspiracy of scientists. Then a lot of people thought that was a denigrating term, so I use the term critics of climate science now, which I suppose is probably the most neutral form you can get.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I've used contrarian. I don't like to use the word skeptic.
Yeah,
They
I
often
agree with you.
refer to themselves as climate science skeptics, but the skeptic has a specific meaning in my circle, so to speak. It's people who are skeptical of claims of extraordinary claims, as it were, claims of the paranormal and so forth. But so yeah, I don't use the word denier that much, frankly, because at least in the United States, it's associated with Holocaust denialism, and that's really a pejorative. And I'm not interested in starting out by insulting people. If you go to our website, my colleagues have a section there about use of the term denialism, and it actually is a social science term that's got something of a long history. And when we use it at NCSC, it is in that context. But yeah, I'll use contrarian. Critic is I may start borrowing that from you, Potholer. That's a useful term.
Yeah, critic of climate science. I mean, these are people who don't accept the overwhelming research that's been done. And I agree with you on the term skeptic, because people say to me sometimes, well, first of all, they're not skeptics, because I find that these are people who are actually the opposite of skeptical. They're gullible, because they will basically believe anything they read on the internet. If a blog comes up, I mean, there was one recently which I did a video on. The Daily Mail said that the Arctic ice has returned and that it's a sign that the Earth is cooling. And I mean, to be skeptical, you would have to actually check that information. When you check it with the data, you discover actually that's a load of nonsense. So to me, someone who is skeptical is someone who doesn't necessarily believe everything they read, but checks the information and verifies it. So they're certainly not skeptical. The other thing I get a lot is, you don't understand the skeptic's position. And I say, well, there are so many skeptics' positions. There are, if they call themselves skeptics, there are people who think carbon dioxide is not the result of human activity. There are people who think carbon dioxide has no effect on climate. People who think it has some effect. People who think it has a lot of effect, but there's nothing we can do about it. It's too late. So there are all kinds of ideas out there in opposition to conventional science.
Indeed.
I just wonder if we can bring in Don at this stage, because I had the privilege of talking to both Don and you, Eugenie, yesterday, and we were talking about how you seek to persuade people out of their particular position. Don, you made some very interesting observations about, I guess, the futility of some arguments that you can use, evidential arguments you can use, and question what is the best way of convincing someone out of a position that they hold.
In my opinion, at least, the best way of convincing somebody begins with understanding what type of person you're dealing with. As we discussed yesterday, there are some people, it's the same thing as in sales, as well as, in any sort of situation where you're trying to change somebody or influence somebody. People are either going to buy what you say regardless of what you do. There are people who are not going to buy what you say, I mean, regardless of the argument that you give them, and then there are the people in the middle. Different approaches are needed. I mean, you need people like Dawkins or Hitchens, the more incendiary skeptics, to kind of rally the base and vocalize those people, because they support people like the NCSC in a lot of situations. I'm not certain of your funding, but I mean, I imagine that it certainly helps. But that's not really good for people who are sitting on the fence. I think that you need to take a more kid gloves and rational and calm approach to that. You know, it's like we were discussing earlier about what it takes to win a debate, and a lot of times the person with the most correct information does not necessarily win it. It's how you present it, how you come off, and if you're likable by the people that you're trying to speak with. And when you come off as too harsh, it's self-defeating. So I think that the big thing to do is just kind of figure out who you're dealing with and what method is best to go against them. You know, try not to come off as too abrasive.
And trust. People are not going to change their views unless they trust you and have some sort of respect for you. You generally don't generate that feeling of trust and respect by kicking people in the shins.
Exactly, and when you start a discussion and you
I
immediately put the
suppose-
person on the
what we should-
defensive, they're going to be less likely to listen to you strictly because they're attracted away from you. They're so focused on defending themselves that they're not interested in embracing your position. As soon as you attack them, you immediately cut off that possibility.
So you have to keep in mind, what is your goal? If your goal is to persuade somebody toward your point of view, then do what you need to do to reach that goal. It may require suppressing your ego, which some people have trouble doing. But you know, building a sense of trust and building a sense of respect for the people who disagree with you is necessary if you're going to persuade them. And for my mind, if I want to achieve my goals, I need to persuade people. I cannot force people to hold my views. I live in a democracy, so I have to persuade them.
And also realize when you have no chance.
I was going to pick up.
Oh, sorry,
this is going to pick up with you, if I may, Eugenie, because if you can't use evidence to support your case, what are you left with? And if people are not going to accept evidence, then how can you persuade them?
Well, why would you not use evidence? I don't think anybody here believes that evidence is irrelevant.
I'm totally sorry if you misunderstood what I was saying. I would use evidence to persuade someone. But if someone is reluctant to accept evidence, how can I persuade them?
You can persuade them with evidence if you have established some sort of relationship with that person, a relationship based upon trust and respect. If you have not established that relationship, all of the evidence on the planet is not going to persuade that person towards your point of view. And this is why, for example, when teachers who have conservative Christian students in their classes and they're kind of, you know, beating their heads against the wall, trying to get this kid to understand and accept the science. What do I do? What do I do? I encourage them to direct that student toward one of the websites that is run by other conservative Christians, but ones who do accept the science, because those people will automatically have credibility with that student, whereas a non-believer like me certainly is not going to have credibility with that student, regardless of the quality of my evidence. The evidence, the science, is necessary but not sufficient. If you're going to persuade people whose views are different from you, you have to establish a relationship with them first before the evidence is going to be listened to. You got to get the fingers out of the ears, and there's a number of ways that one can do that.
I understand that, but what I also hear in that is that the videos that, for example, Potholer makes, which are very factual, they are always well referenced. Are you saying that he is effectively wasting his time by doing these videos? I can't believe that. I would have thought that he's having some effect. I certainly hope he is. And that's, I think, a purely evidence. Would you agree, Paolo? Your videos are purely evidence-based.
I know that they are having an effect. I do get lots of messages from people who say either that they've suddenly realized, they've learned. First of all, I think people have learned how to question things better by watching my videos, because one thing I've always been telling people to do, they come to me and they say, I don't understand how to counter these arguments. And the one thing I've really got through, I think, is to get people to check sources. If someone comes up with a piece of information, the first thing I say to them is find out what the source is. Ask this person, what's the source of your information? And if they say, well, I heard it from the local butcher, or well, I read it on some blog, then you can start to say, well, it's not a credible source of information anyway. But I think people, once they learn where information comes from, then they can see whether it's factually accurate or not. So I have had people who say, yeah, they have been certainly taught from, I hate to say taught, I'm not a teacher by any means, but they've learned to find out more about information, and they've been persuaded to certain points of view that back the scientific case. So I know it is having an effect. But you do get the people, as Eugenie says, the people who will not be persuaded, and as you say, DPR, people who won't be persuaded by the evidence. And I have an answer to that. I never argue with them. There are people who have just made up their minds about something, and they simply refuse to change their minds. Whatever evidence you present to them, it's not going to do any good. The way that I get around this is two things, and I learned this as a journalist. First is, I present myself as somebody very stupid, which is not difficult because, look, I was never the brightest kid at school. And that's the honest truth. I always say I came bottom of the class. People don't believe it. It's absolutely true. If you try and assert yourself on top of somebody and show yourself to be smarter, you're just going to get into an ego fight, which is no good. You just give the person respect and say, look, I assume that you know more about this than I do. Don't try and argue a case. Just ask them questions. And asking questions is never going to antagonize anybody. You just say, you clearly know a lot about this. Please tell me why this, and the other. And eventually you start asking questions that they cannot answer because they've already given an answer which now ties themselves in knots, and they get a contradiction. And they begin to see, well, hang on a minute, I can't answer that one. Now, it may not change their minds, but at least it gives them that element of self-doubt that they suddenly realize, well, there may be things that I don't know the answer to. So I find questioning people is a lot easier. It saves you from having an argument. It saves you from getting into a kind of a mud fight over things, and it does get people to start questioning their own beliefs. I don't know if you've had the same experience.
John.
Oh, yes, very much so.
If I could hop in real quick, actually, what Potholer just said, that's a great insight. It's very, how to win friends and influence people in the sense of, if you want to increase acceptance of an idea, one wonderful way to do that is to kind of lead people along, let them connect the dots that you're planting in front of them, and let them think it was their own idea, because they're much more likely to accept an idea that they've construed in their own mind, or at least that they believe that they have, than if you try and shove it down their throat. You also asked, is Potholer wasting his time trying to convince some people? Yeah, absolutely. Some people he is wasting his time on. On many of them, he's not. The distinction is what motivates these people. In my experience, people have different beliefs for different reasons, and oftentimes they're not valid. And I don't mean to lump creationists in with Holocaust deniers. I'm only using it as an example. I mean no connection there in terms of severity. But people don't always believe things based on evidence. I mean, we have footage, we have names, we have bodies, we have physical sites. What more? If people only base their beliefs on evidence, reason, and logic, what more could you possibly need to convince somebody? There wouldn't be any Holocaust deniers if people based their beliefs only on reason and logic. So there has to be something else there, something that's missing. No, that's just my thought.
Yeah,
Actually,
I agree. I agree completely.
Actually, there's a lovely parallel to that. Kurt Wise, who's one of the more interesting of the young Earth creationists, has said very bluntly, publicly, and in print that if all you had to go on was the geological and fossil and scientific evidence, you would have to conclude that the Earth was ancient and that evolution occurred. But he's got a PhD from Harvard, by the way, and he remains a young Earth creationist because that is his interpretation of the Bible. So that's a classic example of somebody for whom the evidence is never going to be adequate to change the ideas because there's an initial barrier that stands in the way. I suspect a lot of the people who watch Potholer's videos on climate change are open to his arguments because they just simply don't know very much about it, and he has persuasive, informative videos that are easy to understand, and so that helps them to grasp the science. But they don't come in with the barrier to listening to the evidence from the get-go. And this is the problem with a lot of creationists when they are faced with evidence for evolution. It's also the case with a number of libertarian and politically conservative individuals when they encounter the climate change issue. And even good, solid information like you can find in Potholer and Green Man and some of the other YouTube sources, is not going to be persuasive because they kind of dug in their heels ideologically and have have those fingers in the ears.
Yeah, I think also the people that visit my channel since the series on climate change started, and also the one on creationism, they tend to already be in the camp of the scientific ideas anyway. I think I have a very intelligent bunch. We've got over 70,000 subscribers now, and I think most of them do at least understand the basics of science. I'm actually rather disappointed. I get so many thumbs up, because if you look at the videos, you know, it's like the ratio of thumbs up to thumbs down is something like, I don't know, 30 to 1. And that dismays me, because it makes me think, okay, the people who are absolutely wedded to the idea that climate change is a hoax, or that you know, God made the earth in 7 days, they're not coming to the channel. And I would much rather have a balance. And yet you see other channels which are creationist channels, or channels about global warming being a hoax, and they get the opposite. They get 20 to 1. They get thumbed up. And it shows to me that there's a polarization. People are only looking at the channels that reflect their views. They're only reading those blogs that reflect their views, and they're simply refusing to look at anything else. I actually would much rather look at a video that was in opposition to my views. I'd like to challenge my views. I don't think most people do that, unfortunately. They're much more comfortable just hearing the echo of their own voice, and I think that's why we're not actually getting a lot of changes of mind. I think people are just not tuning in to different points of view.
I think that's very true, but I don't think it's quite as, I don't think the situation is quite as grim as you think it is. And that's because I really do believe that the most effective communication is one-on-one. And what you're doing with your videos, and what I do in my public lectures, and other people do, is actually helping the people on our side to better present the positive views for our position on evolution and climate. You know, the people say, well, you're just preaching to the choir, and I've got a little smart alecky response to that. I remind them that the choir needs ammo. Okay.
Yeah, actually, that's very true, Eugene. I have thought the same thing. I think, you know, people who haven't been able to argue the case do actually message me and say, thanks for doing this, because now I can go to my brother or my uncle and tell him why he's full of shit.
Or
and oftentimes people will know something's wrong, but they won't know what or why. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And hopefully you'll go to your brother or your uncle or the person who's standing behind you in the supermarket line and provide the science in an accurate and understandable fashion, which you have modeled with your videos, and that's a hugely positive thing. So, you know, don't feel that just because you're getting all those thumbs up that little is being accomplished. It's hard to quantify the kinds of things I'm talking about, but by the way, there was a very good article in a recent New Yorker. I'm sorry, I don't remember exactly the issue, but within the last couple of weeks, by Atul Gawande, and he's actually talking about the acceptance of medical procedures, and why is it that some ideas are accepted really quickly and others take a long time, and basically his takeaway is that the best way to get changes in medical procedures, if you want to have medical personnel, the doctors and nurses, to change the way they do things, is one-on-one. Just presenting them with the scientific evidence that you know, aseptic conditions result in less spread of disease, or that anesthesia is a good thing for surgery, or that holding a baby close to the mother's body helps to helps to stabilize the newborn's temperature, etc. These kinds of things are best communicated if you have individual kind of transmission of these ideas. And it's, I keep coming back to this, it's based upon a sense of trust of the person who's transmitting the information. I mean, a good summary is that the science is necessary but not sufficient. But it is necessary, and thank goodness we do have the best science on our side.
And if
That
I can
gives us
hop
a
in
big
here,
advantage.
I mean, if I can hop in, I mean, one big thing about people in general, I'm talking about the general population, which by and large doesn't really have scientific training. They don't trust the evidence. They trust the person who's conveying it to them. And for a lot of people, it doesn't matter what you say. It matters whether or not they like you, because you could be saying something that's completely factually correct. Or I'm sorry, let me phrase this another way. There can be somebody who they cannot stand that is presenting the information very clearly, concisely, it's all factually correct, and they'll dismiss it because they dislike the person. Meanwhile, you've got another person, like a Ted Haggard or a anyways, who's just lying through his teeth. Everything he says is factually incorrect, but 9 times out of 10, that person is going to go with them. Like Kent Hovind is considered a great debater by the uneducated person who watches him. And so you really have to kind of keep that in mind whenever you're approaching these people. The general population, their mind is oftentimes not like that of someone who's trained in science, so you have to keep that in mind. We trust the evidence over the people. Generally speaking, people trust people over the evidence, so that's something to keep in mind.
Well, don't be too sure of that, because there's some survey research showing that educated people respond the same way as less educated people when it comes to those kinds of issues.
That makes me feel worse. Yeah.
Yeah,
worse.
I know. I'm not helping, am I? But there was a great study where they took identical newspaper articles about the current events, the war in Iraq or whatever it was, and told liberals that the article was written by liberal, told conservatives that the article was written by a conservative, told other liberals that the article was written by a conservative, etc., etc. They had a 4x4 table there, or 2x4 table, and basically, if you are a liberal and thought the article was written by a liberal, you thought it was a good article. If you're a liberal and you thought the article was written by a conservative, you thought it was a crappy article. Sorry. it works.
Can't we all just get along?
Yeah. Speaking of getting along, didn't we have a game to play?
Well, we did, but I had this horrible suspicion that we would end up having this wonderful conversation, and I feel almost bad about interrupting it. But yeah, we did have a game to play. And just so I can remind people, this is an event for Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF. And please take a few moments to click on one of the donation links and make a small donation, any donation. It all makes sense to do so. But yes, shall we get on to Would I Lie to You?
Yep.
Do I have to explain the game to people? Okay. What has happened is that all 3 of the people here, Eugenie, Potholer, and Don Exodus, have sent me 3 true statements. Some of them actually sent me more than 3. I've then mixed them up with creations of my own, which are untrue statements. And what they have to do, they won't know which statement they are being given. They have to convince you, the audience, and also the other 2, that their statement is correct. They're going to be cross-examined on this statement. Now, last year, we only had Eugenie and Potholer, and I have to say that Eugenie absolutely whooped Potholer's ass on this.
He did.
She was
You look
wonderfully.
sweet. He's a really tough cookie.
Now, that doesn't mean she's a great liar. What it means is that she just presented the truthful and untruthful statements in such a way that she confused Potholer as to which one was true or not. And I see that Don Exodus has disappeared. No, he's back now. Seeing as Eugenie was so wonderful in the way that she performed last year, we're going to start with her, just to give excuse me, Don Exodus a chance to get up to speed with exactly what's happening. What I will be doing, and I can't remember, I've got to open up my document and cut and paste something to Eugenie. So I will be sending Eugenie a statement. It could be one of her true statements, it could be one of her false statements. The other two have no idea whether it's true or not. I'm going to go with this one. I hope I'll be able to post it. I think I can do this. I hope I can do this. Well, it doesn't matter if the others read it anyway. But Eugenie, you should have received a message.
I don't see it anywhere. Where would I find it?
Okay.
It would be over there under group chat.
If you look to the left-hand, on the left-hand side,
On the
near the
left-hand
top,
side.
there may be a box that's got chat.
Yeah.
If you click on chat, has that opened up?
I see.
For you?
I see two comments from Whitney, but I don't see anything.
Let me try again. It's all going
should be open.
Don't worry. Bear with me one second. Right, Eugenie. Send message. Send. Well, I can send it to all of you. It doesn't matter. I thought I had done that. Is that nothing coming through to you there?
I don't see anything. Sorry.
If it isn't, okay.
So how about if you just read it?
I will try and send it to you. I will send it to you through Skype. I think that's probably
God,
the best.
that's.
You're really motivated to
Right, we can
send
try
this
that.
private message.
I thought
Okay,
there was a way
one
of
of
doing
my.
it on this,
Okay, are we ready? I got it from
Yep.
Skype.
Yeah.
One of my best friends. Hang on. One of my best friends as a child turned out to be a serial killer.
Okay, Don, do you want to take the first?
Apparently you do, Potholer. You don't believe this is true?
Well, okay. Let's start the line of questioning. A serial killer. First of all, what did he or she do, and when did this happen?
Well, this happened back in the 60s in Wisconsin, where I grew up, where there was a really quite dreadful fellow named Ed Gein, who committed a series of murders, and he was, I mean, it was just terribly, terribly shocking, because he actually would skin the dead people and tan their hides and make, lampshades, and I mean, it was just a dreadful, dreadful man. And he, as I say, I grew up in Wisconsin, and when I was very, very little, the Geins were living in the western Wisconsin little town called La Crosse, where I was growing up. Now, it might be stretching things to say one of my friends as a child. They were acquaintances. They certainly were not close friends. Gein was older than I was by about 10 years, but it was pretty shocking to have to find out later on that this person that we knew as a family was turned out to be this dreadful, crazy man.
Don, you want to throw something in?
What was your friend's name who knew them?
No, the killer's name was Ed Gein.
Okay.
And he was. I mean, they lived on the next block, so to speak, back in La Crosse.
And how old were you when he turned out to be a serial killer?
Well, when he was discovered as a serial killer, by that time I was like in high school. So it was quite a number of years later on.
Do you remember how they caught him?
I just don't remember. That was so long ago. I really haven't looked him up on the internet.
I'm trying to figure out the chronology here. He lived down the road from you. You were in high school when he committed these murders. How old was he?
Well, I lived in La Crosse when I was a small child. We moved from La Crosse when I was like first or second grade. So I was, how old would that be? 7, 8 years old, something like that. But then we left La Crosse and we moved to Milwaukee and Minneapolis and other cities in the Midwest. The Geins were down on the next street, and how old would Ed have been then? If I was 7 or 8, he must have been in his 20s by then. And it wasn't until I was in high school that he was found out that he had been committing all these murders, and by that time he was a man in his 30s, 40s, like that. But yeah, pretty dreadful fellow.
Okay. Don, I should warn you. I mean, the hesitancy that Eugenie shows is often just an act. She looks like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. She couldn't possibly bluff, but she is incredibly good at this.
I don't know. I had formed my opinion in the first 20 seconds, so and it hasn't changed. I don't really have anything else to ask. I'm sorry. I don't need to be a party pooper. I'm just gathering more evidence. I have nothing to contribute at this point.
Let's turn it to the audience.
She came out with the name very quickly.
Before we take your views, we'll invite the audience. And unfortunately, there's a much greater lag due to the way we're broadcasting it this year as it was last year. We used to have an instant vote. But we'll just give it a few seconds and see if people think that Eugenie had a friend who turned out to be a serial killer. And whilst we're waiting for that, okay, come on. Okay, Don, is it true or is it false?
I believe it is false.
Okay. I thought false at first. I think she's putting on too much of a show of not quite remembering. I thought at first when you mentioned they were in high school together, I thought that's too much of a coincidence. But if it's just an acquaintance who was down the road, she was much younger than him, really had nothing to do with him, that's entirely plausible. I'm going to go with true. But then my record on this is not very good, as you know, DPR.
It's not very good. I know. We've got one true, we've got one false. Eugenie, will you reveal to us whether you had a childhood friend who was a serial killer?
There really was a serial killer in Wisconsin named Ed Gein. I never knew him, and I doubt if he ever lived anywhere near me. Sorry, it's a lie.
I'm going to say I think that goes 1 point to Don Exodus. This is like history repeating itself, Potholer. You got it wrong again. No points to you.
That was a terrible question.
I have to say in my defense, I was only defeated by the distance between them.
The thing, honestly, Potholer, the thing to do with Judy is just say she's lying all the time. And then I think might score some points. But
50% of the time, you're right every time.
Let me find one for you, Potholer. And I've got 3 true and 3 false.
Now, is this going to come up on... I've got the message group chat on the right-hand side of my screen here, so it might
Okay.
come up. Like Eugenie, I can see the messages from Whitney Gray. I can't see anything else at the moment, but I've also got
Well,
Skype.
I'll try and post it there. If it doesn't work here, I will send it to you. Oh, hang on. Let me just... Right, send message. Are you not receiving that?
No, not getting anything.
Otherwise, I'll send it to you on Skype. And we'll
Send
see
it
what
on
we get
Skype
to.
then. I've got that up.
Okay. No. Okay. Hangouts is a new thing to me. Whilst I'm sending it to you on Skype, can I just remind people, this is a charity event. Please take a moment or two, because it'll take a moment or two for me to get this through to Potholer. Take a moment or two to click on one of the links on the right-hand side of your screen if you're watching it on the YouTube live screen, and make a donation, please. Potholer, you should have that now.
I have it. I have it. Okay, shall I read it out? Got listening ears on?
Yes, so that's the idea of the game.
I was once stuck in a lift, or if you like, an elevator, for 3 hours with the foreign minister of South Korea and his bodyguard. The minister was in his pajamas, and his bodyguard thought I was an assassin and came close to shooting me.
Don or
well, that's that then.
Who would like to go first on this one?
Can you tell me where this elevator was?
It was in Taiwan, and it was at an international conference. The foreign ministers from various East Asian countries were meeting.
What was the topic of the conference?
I don't remember exactly. I think it was some sort of dispute over maritime boundaries or something like that. To be honest with you, it was a while ago. This is going back to about 1993, and I can't remember exactly the nature of the conference. But these kinds of summits and conferences used to happen all the time, and this was just one of many.
Why was he in his pajamas?
That's a very good question. Well, I had actually come to do an interview with him, and he was on his way out, and he didn't have much time to get changed, and he was going to another room where they had a formal kind of setting with other members of his staff, and he was going to get changed into, it was some kind of a tuxedo or something for an event. It was rather bizarre, but he didn't have time to get changed from when he'd been having a nap in the evening, and as I had come to interview him, he sort of apologized and said, look, I'm on my way, I have to go to the dressing area and I've got to get fitted out for tonight's thing. They've got some kind of it's a tuxedo thing with a big cummerbund and so on, so they had someone in a different dressing room to come and take care of him. So I accompanied him. I had my tape recorder with me, and I was talking to him as we were going along. And so it was rather bizarre, but he was dressed in his pajamas when we got in the elevator.
Got any other
questions? What made you think that... Oh, is it my turn, or
yes, go for it.
Yeah, done.
Yeah,
Eugenie,
what made you think that he thought that you were trying to assassinate him?
Mind. You may have
Sorry,
to
say
that,
again, Don.
Don, I repeat that, Don, because I think I was talking over you.
So what made you think that he thought that you were trying to assassinate him, or that the guards thought that?
It was his bodyguard. His bodyguard thought I was trying to assassinate him because I changed microphones when I was actually using a smaller mic, and I wanted to use the bigger one, which was a kind of a shotgun mic, which has a handle. So what I did was I just paused the tape and went in my bag, plugged in another mic, and I lifted it up. And when I lifted it up, it was this long... Actually, I've got it here. It was this long microphone that looked like a gun, and he assumed that I was about to shoot the guy in the head, and he just grabbed my arm. And anyway,
feather dust him.
I quickly showed him that it was a microphone, and he took some convincing because he didn't speak English. But the foreign minister calmed him down. It was all okay.
And was this during the interview, or this was before you had interviewed him?
I started off, I was interviewing as we were going along because I had a small tape recorder in my hand. And as we were talking, I said, look, I want to get this just better quality when we were waiting for the elevator, and I was plugging it in. The elevator doors opened. We went in, and then I had it plugged in, so I then pulled the microphone out of the bag that I was carrying on my shoulder. And that was when I got attacked. Not viciously. I mean, he just grabbed my arm, and just because of misunderstanding.
How long had you been in Taiwan before this happened?
Oh, only a couple of days. I think the conference itself was only like a 2-day conference. I got there the day before it started, so we get all the accreditation sorted out and so on. And I was staying in the same hotel because all the media were all in the same hotel as the ministers, because we had special access. I mean, once you're accredited, you've got access, then there's no problem about being in the same building. Otherwise, if you're a member of the public, you obviously can't get in. There's too much security there.
Right, and had you been awake for a while, or was this early in the morning or late in the afternoon?
This was like about 10, I think this was about 9 or 10 o'clock at night. I had been awake. It was the minister who'd been asleep, taking a nap, and it was this late night thing that they were all going to. It was some formal sort of cocktail thing. But yeah, no, I was wide awake.
And you weren't jet lagged because you'd been there for a couple days, right?
No, I'd come out of Tokyo, so it's only like a 3-hour flight anyway to Taipei.
Okay.
I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. I'm going to ask Eugenie and Don, what do you think? Was Potholer assaulted by someone who thought he was about to assassinate the minister, or what? What do you reckon? True or false, Eugenie?
Well, I would say the part about the microphone was actually quite believable. I think Potholer really hit his stride as he sort of kind of got into it a little bit more. But the thing that stands out to me as being a likely tell, as they say in the magic biz, is the minister had his pajamas on to take a nap in the evening. You don't put on your pajamas if you're going to take a nap in the evening. You wear your pajamas at night. You might be wearing your pajamas at the crack of dawn when you got up, but I don't think you'd change them to take a nap in the evening. So I'd say it's a lie.
Okay, we've got a lie from Eugenie. Don Exodus, what do you reckon? He's spotted the truth. Yes,
I believe him.
Okay,
I believe him. I do.
One no.
No.
Okay, Potholer, what do you reveal to us, whether you were stuck in a lift for 3 hours?
Well, DPR, let me ask you a question. What on earth would the foreign minister be doing in his pajamas in an elevator? Of course, it's false. I'll tell you how this came about.
Potholer,
I trusted you!
The reason I threw that one at you is because you did say one of your true statements was you did an interview with that particular minister whilst he was wearing his pajamas.
Oh.
So I just added a little extra twist to it. So tell us, you did actually do an interview with him in his pajamas.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll tell you the story.
I
did interview the foreign minister of South Korea in his pajamas because I needed him to get a comment, and we were going to air in like about 90 minutes. And I went up to his room and knocked on the door. Like I say, most of the story was true because you could, media have access. And he answered in his pajamas, and I said, look, I need to get, the South Korean government's position on this, and I had the microphone with me, and he gave me an interview, and just at the doorway of his hotel room. Had we been in that situation, then the story would have been believable. Trying to think of why he would be in an elevator in his pajamas, that might have stretched it a little bit too far. But no, the essentials of the story were true.
I thought at least if I gave you a little nugget of truth, you might have been able to catch up. And indeed you did. You convinced one of our fans. I don't know what the audience thought, but you convinced one of our fans. So,
actually, I thought the microphone thing nearly convinced me as well. I'm glad I had it here at hand.
No, as soon as you pull the microphone out, that's what completely didn't convince me.
I know, that was the one thing that popped out at me, like, okay, he's full of crap. But I was listening to how he was telling the story, and it seemed plausible. So I wasn't going on what he said. I was going on how he said it. So.
Yeah, as Eugenie said, I got into my stride. Once I got over the pajamas in the elevator thing, then the rest was easier.
Well, you think it's easy, Don Exodus. It's your turn next.
I didn't say it was
this
easy.
is
No.
I'm going to do it through Skype, if that's all right, because
Yeah, let me log into Skype.
Are you not already?
Well, I don't want my.
No, you're not actually. No.
I don't want my 3 bytes a second that are going through the internet right now
I'll
to be diverted to Skype.
Wait,
hang on.
It doesn't post into because everyone else can read it. I could read it out for you if you like, but it's better.
Hang on 1 second, DPR. I'm trying to figure out which pixel Skype is in, and then I'll be able to read your message. 1 second.
No, I'll have to send it to you now. Yeah, I can see you on Skype.
All right, I'm on.
Okay.
I'm on.
Okay. Your message or your statement is that one.
Hang on.
Now, just for those that, before he reads it out, just so people understand, Don Exodus does not know whether this is a true statement that he sent me or one that I have invented for him to read out. So, there you go, Don.
I was once in a barbershop quartet in Skokie, Illinois.
No, that's not what I sent you.
No, I was once sued for $2 million by one of my patients for taking out the wrong tooth.
For taking out the wrong what?
For taking out the wrong tooth.
Oh, taking out the wrong tooth.
Yes.
I know that Americans say it differently. Tooth. Don Exodus is a dentist. Everyone knows. I thought everyone knew that Don Exodus was a dentist. Yeah.
Right. Okay. When did this happen?
He confessed to being a dentist. By the way, I didn't mention this before, but I did my dissertation on teeth.
Oh yeah. What?
Oh, Eugenie, you take the first question.
You'll be able to discover whether he's truthing or lying. Then, won't you, Eugenie? Truthing or lying?
A fellow dentite. Wonderful.
What? I'm sorry. What's happening here?
Use your forensic skills and discover whether it was suit or not.
So you go first, Eugenie.
No, actually, that was going to be my question also. Where did this activity take place?
You mean where in the mouth, or where geographically?
Well, the last I looked, the only place where teeth are found is, in fact, in the mouth. But what country did this?
In the Virgin Islands. I thought you meant which tooth, but yeah, Virgin Islands.
Well, that's a good question, actually. What tooth was it?
Was I supposed to take out, or what tooth did I take out?
What tooth were you sued for allegedly taking out?
I shouldn't be laughing at it. It's actually serious. I was supposed to be taking out number 18, and I took out number 19.
Okay. One of the problems that I have when I go to the dentist is that they're always talking about tooth numbers, and real human beings don't use numbers. Was it an incisor? Was it a premolar? Was it a molar?
It was. I was supposed to take out a lower first molar, and I took out a lower second molar instead, or vice versa. I was supposed to take out the lower second, and I took out the lower first.
What was wrong with the molar that you were supposed to take out? Why did you have to take it out?
The patient had generalized perio, which is gum disease. So all the teeth were fairly mobile. They were unrestored. So it's not like it had a crown or a filling or anything like that. Or a gross, chunk taken out of it. It wasn't bombed out. It was just, they were all mobile down there. They all look the same, really. And it's actually a really easy mistake. It happens all the time. I know that sounds terrible. I know that it sounds terrible, but if you think about it, think about how many teeth you take out or work on, extract, examine, fill, crown, root canal in a year. If I am 99.99% accurate, you're still going to mess up once a year. And you try and be more accurate than that, but it's something that happens.
You're getting away from my question here.
Sorry.
So I just asked what was wrong with the tooth, and basically it was a gum disease in that tooth?
Yeah, perio. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Not just in that tooth, all over, but especially in that tooth.
let me just, there's a line of questioning here. There was a gum disease in the tooth you were supposed to take out.
Correct.
Presumably, then, there was no gum disease in the tooth you did take out, correct?
Incorrect. There was gum disease there too. However, there was no abscess or anything like that, and it wasn't as acute. The patient had the
okay.
DPR quit laughing.
So the tooth you were supposed to take out not only had gum disease but an abscess as well, whereas the tooth that you in fact took out did not have an abscess.
It did not have an abscess, but it did have gum disease, although not as severe.
Okay, now the question, Eugenie, is would a dentist really take out a tooth that had no abscess in it? Would he not recognize the difference between one that had an abscess and one that didn't? It sounds like a pretty... I mean, look, apologies if it's true, sounds like a dumb mistake to make.
Well, it depends on how big the abscess is. I mean, there are some abscesses that are really, really obvious. It could conceivably be just a very tiny abscess, but the whole thing sounds a little fishy to me, actually. Let me ask you, Don, did you win or lose the case?
It's actually still going through trial. Or not trial, but the lawyer's handling it. It's been, I moved back in April, so it's been, what, 6 months? So, I mean, and this happened last January, so.
Really?
So you actually hadn't been practicing dentistry for very long then, huh?
Nope, I'm a newbie. That's why they call it practicing.
And
that's such a moldy old joke, but I love it. Okay, I think I'm done asking questions.
And most of the time you don't see abscesses, by the way.
I've made my mind up as well, so.
Okay, Potholer and Eugenie seem to have made their mind up. Tell us what you think. Let's go, Eugenie first. Is he lying or being honest?
I'd say it's a lie. I would think that it would be really hard to, even if you had periodontal disease on both teeth, to really screw up that badly. Also, $2 million is entirely too much for a molar tooth. I mean, I could understand it if it was an incisor, because that's something that's really visual, but, you know, I mean, you could have really totally screwed up somebody's appearance by taking out an incisor tooth. But a molar, not so much. I mean, I don't think that the $2 million would be a reasonable thing to ask for. I think it's a lie.
Okay,
yeah.
We've got a lie. Potholer, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm with Eugenie on the screwing up thing. I think it's. I don't know much about dentistry. I would think that you would know which tooth you're supposed to be taking out. They're reasonably good on that kind of thing. The thing that makes me suspicious is that if this case is ongoing, firstly, I wouldn't admit to it. I wouldn't put that down as one of my true options.
Well, the tooth is gone. I mean, it's already gone. I can't be like, no, I didn't, and super glue it back in. I tried that. It didn't work. Go ahead.
Second thing is, I imagine the case would be sub judice. I think admitting that you've actually screwed up and while the case is going on would probably not benefit your case. And DPR, you might know more about this than I do, but I'm going with a lie.
Well, I have to say that for next, everything I thought was working well until you said the case is still going through the case.
I know. As soon as it popped in my head, I know. As soon as I said it, I was like, shit, I wouldn't be talking about it if it was still ongoing. And I sure as hell wouldn't be talking about it on video in front of 100 strangers. It's going to be preserved and posted on YouTube. But actually,
so
it is.
Are you prepared to tell us whether it's true or a lie, as if you need to?
It's false for now.
Let's
move your patience.
But your career is young, right?
Plenty of time.
I think it's Eugenie's turn. Let's
all right,
move
now what are you
on,
going to do?
and let me select one of the false statements or one of the true statements. And I can't remember which one I gave you last time.
Last time was false.
Are you going to Skype it? Or you...
Yeah, but which one? Oh, which one was it, though?
I think you sent it to me by Skype last time.
Which? Oh, I could send you that one. That would really, really confuse people. Oh, or should I send you that one? Ow.
Eugenie, molars actually are more important because they function in the bite and they're irreducibly complex, so they're harder to restore. But just so you know.
Well, possibly, but in terms of why somebody would sue, I would think that they would have a better case if they were suing based on their appearance. But I don't really go around suing my dentist, so what do I know?
Yeah. People are crazy. That is the biggest thing I've learned in the past couple of years. It's the public.
Oh, sorry, copy. So bear with me. The other thing is I can't find the one I sent her before.
The serial
So
killer
I obviously
one?
had in mind. I had in mind to send it to someone else. I don't know.
All right, here it comes. When I retire, I want to dedicate my time to writing about the works of Robert Redford, who I have had a crush on ever since I watched Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Okay, here's a quick question for you, Eugenie.
Let's start with you.
Do you mind, Don? I just got a quick question on this. In Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, when Robert Redford is shooting at tin cans to show how good a shot he is, he completely misses, and then he manages to shoot them all at once, very quickly. What's the line he says? Do you remember the scene?
I remember the scene. I can answer that.
I don't actually remember that scene.
You're not that big a fan then. Do you remember, what does he say, PPR? Do you remember?
Well, I'm a big...
He says, I shoot better when I move, and I thought that would be a classic line that you would remember. What do you reckon, Don? Over to you.
That I don't remember, but...
What was the last movie Robert Redford was in?
The last
Eugenie.
movie he was in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can you...
Well, I hate to say it, being gray-haired and starting to get wrinkles myself, but it's really the younger Robert Redford that is the hunk. The older guy, he hasn't aged real well, and I haven't really paid much attention to the more recent canon, as it were, but. He's an interesting guy, and the whole thing about Sundance is really pretty interesting, and that's really the thing I would want to write about, because it's his whole support of independent movie making that is really quite unique. I mean, I can't think of another Hollywood figure who's really invested that much time and money, really, into supporting non-Hollywood kinds of productions. He's really put his money and time where his mouth is on that. And there's been some wonderful things coming out of Sundance.
I'm gonna cut that speech short and grill you again on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, because if you say that was the film that influenced you to love Robert Redford, you must have seen it more than once. I've only seen it a couple of times, but there was another famous scene where Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were trying to escape, and they were going to jump off the edge of a cliff into the water.
The classic scene.
Robert Redford wouldn't jump. Why wouldn't he jump?
He can't swim.
Oh, okay, you got that one. So you've seen the movie. That's one thing. All right.
Now that is such a classic scene too. And of course, Paul Newman is so great too.
You want to write a book about him? Is that the thing?
Well, I probably wouldn't write a book, but I certainly would write an article, because again, mostly because of his contributions to the promotion of independent film, because that's something that really gets not nearly enough attention. And
okay.
there's
Why
such
haven't you done
really
that
good.
already?
I barely have time to write the stuff I need to write for NCSC. I'm a really slow writer, and boy, that is truthful no matter what else is said tonight, because if my staff will be the quickest to tell you that when I've got a writing assignment, everybody is always very anxious because it's never done until just the last minute before it's due, and always with a great deal of angst, because I don't write that poorly, but I really write slowly. So I have not had time to do any.
How many words do you think you're writing?
Let's give Don Exodus an opportunity. If indeed he needs it.
Go ahead, Don.
I've already made up my mind. I don't need to.
I think most of us.
The article would have to be.
Tell us what your mind is, Don Exodus.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
What do you reckon, Don?
It's false.
Truth or lie? False. Potholer.
Yeah. I'm going with.
I have to apologise here. I do have to apologise here. The reason I was so cruel to give Eugenie that one is she was so good last year. I thought, if I can catch her out or something like that, let's see. And yeah, if you can't answer, I'm better if I move. I'm sorry. At that moment, you'd lost it. But Potholer, I could see in your eyes the desire, the revenge. I've got her back. I've got her. Oh, I love this game. It's such fun. Yeah, Eugenie, I'm sorry. You normally last year, absolute perfect performance. First question, great. That one, it's the first time I've seen you fumble. But do not worry. Because
hang on, I just want to add something to that. DPR, that's not the first time. If you remember rightly, the last time this happened was when we asked to draw a horse. You remember that one?
I do.
Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah. But I'm also sending you one now, Paolo. This will be
me. Right.
The next statement for Potholer54 to read out and convince us whether this is true or false.
Okay. One of the first things I do every morning is to check that I still have a nose. Don't laugh. You're laughing at my phobias.
I sense, Eugenie, by your reaction that you would like to go first on this one. Eugenie, what have you got to ask him?
All right. Why are you worried about what is it about your nose? Is it the location of the nose, the presence, absence of the nose? What is it that you're checking on in the morning?
Okay, you'll probably notice I have a rather large nose.
If you recall, he did say it's the presence of his nose.
Oh, excuse me.
He checks whether he still has a nose. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Thank you.
Potholer.
Yeah, I have a rather large nose. I was actually teased about it in primary school. This is going way back. This is going so far back, and it's just amazing how these things still stay with you. And I used to get a bit of a consciousness, I suppose you could say, about this. And I had a recurring nightmare one time that birds were pecking at my nose while I was asleep, and I used to wake up, and I would wake up sometimes screaming because I was being attacked by these birds, and that they were pulling my nose on. Actually, I think, to think of it, it might have been because of the Alfred Hitchcock movie, which I saw when I was a kid, probably about the same time. But I used to think that I was being attacked by birds, and every morning when I was a child, first thing I did when I woke up in the morning was to touch my nose and check that it was still there. Even after the nightmares had stopped, I still got this thing that in the morning I would do that automatically. And I mean, I know it's stupid, but I still do it. I just automatically, I get up in the morning, and the first thing I do, I switch on the TV with the news, and I just put my hand to my nose. I'm not consciously thinking, is my nose still there? I know it's there. It's just like an automatic thing. I've been doing it for so long now that I guess I can't get out of the habit. It's not obsessive compulsive, I don't think. It's just something I was doing as a child.
Okay. No more
Don, do
questions.
you have any questions to ask about this before you make your?
I kind of wanted to listen to him talk more. I mean, has there ever been a time you've woken up and your nose hasn't been there? I mean, I don't know what else to ask about this.
Yeah, like I say, it's not that I know it's not going to be there. I know it's there, and I know that birds are not going to come down in the night and do it. It's just now become something that I do just out of habit.
Right.
I don't know, it feels, I can't imagine what it would be like if I woke up in the morning and I hadn't done it. I just can't imagine. I suppose I would then have to touch it, but it wouldn't be the same because, I mean, I feel I've got to do it when I wake up. So it has to be done.
Do you do it any other times throughout the day?
No. I mean, apart from scratching my nose, that's no more than any other person. Apart from that, Don, I assure you, I'm perfectly normal.
Yeah, I mean,
quotation,
doing
put the
it during
bunny
the
ears.
day would be just silly, wouldn't it?
Sorry?
Do we need to ask any more questions, or Don, have you made a determination whether this is true or not?
I'm okay. I'm done.
Yes or no? Is it truth or lie?
I'm going to go with lie.
Me too.
And Eugenie?
Also a lie.
Now, what's interesting about this is I was actually going to use this one as one of those, it's my turn for truth or lie. And this was something that I was going to use myself. And I, unfortunately, put poor Potholer on the spot there. He's obviously lying. But for me, it is true. Every morning, the first thing I do when I wake up is check that I've still got a nose. And it's done very briefly. Actually, it was quite bizarre, much like Potholer did it. It's not a long, drawn-out thing. It's just, oh, yeah, still that. And then I sort of like wake up and carry on with the rest of the day. But I always check whether I've got a nose in the morning. Quite bizarre.
I thought I was
I
rather
could have made
convinced.
up
I
all
believe
sorts of
that.
arguments as to why that would be, but...
I believe that.
Sorry?
No, you believe him, you don't believe me, Don.
But why didn't you believe Potholer when
Well,
he said
because
it?
Potholer seems well adjusted. I don't know. It's just different.
Hey, you don't, DPR.
All right. On that note, I'm acutely aware that we've got the wonderful Dark Matter 2525 and Coctopus Prime waiting to join us, and I did say that they would be on 8 minutes ago. I'm sure you're both watching. If you are, please, if you could extend us the courtesy of another 10 minutes, if that's okay, and then we'll get on to Dark Matter 25 and Coctopus Prime, which I think will be very entertaining. But one quick fire, excuse me, quick fire round. We've got one for each of you. Then we'll have to do it in short form. Let's see if we can get Eugenie up with her next statement, which could be true or it might not be.
DPR, do you want me to go or no?
No, you stay. You've got one more. You've got one more to go. Oh, sorry. You're next.
Yeah, you missed out, Don.
You go first.
No,
Yeah,
I just saw your message. I didn't.
Yeah,
I can just do both back to back if you want. I don't care.
No,
okay.
You go first. Tom.
My ex caught me wearing her underwear, and that subsequently ended the relationship. So she dumped me.
Your ex-wife or ex-girlfriend?
Ex-girlfriend.
Caught
you wearing her underwear. Eugenie looks like a psychiatrist, you know, whether like being in the couch watching her. I think this might be one that she wants to tackle first.
Well, Eugenie is comforting. You guys just seem judging. I don't. Anyways, go ahead.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to be judgmental on this one.
I hate to say it, but I'm just going to cut right to the chase on this one. This is a lie. Number one, we gave you true statements. That is not a statement that he would have given you as a true statement. So
You've
right off
obviously
the
never
bat,
watched any of my videos. I'm just kidding.
I think, yeah, I
Okay,
think.
I'll
Look,
play
if
along.
you
The other thing is, Eugenie,
quick
I have
fire
to say,
round.
when I received his messages, that was the one that I thought was most true. Not to try and confuse things, but I fully believe it. I think details are
All
required.
right.
Potholer,
Which?
over to you.
All right.
All right. Yeah, you're going to ask what underwear?
Details necessary. That's what kind of underwear were you wearing? There are many different kinds of women's undergarments, after all. So, what?
I mean,
specific...
it wasn't a thong. It wasn't a thong, and it wasn't granny panties. It was, I guess you could say, like closer to bikini style. It had like a relatively adequate front and back, but the sides were pretty thin, or thin rather.
Okay, can I ask a question? And I wanted Justin to answer this. Are you either perverted or a transvestite? One or the other. No other options are available, apart from the fact that you're lying, which you can confess to now.
I can't say both.
Yeah, okay, both. We'll accept both.
Okay.
Is this something you've done before? Is this a common thing that you do?
Getting caught or doing it?
No, putting on women's underwear.
I mean, I've done it before. I mean, I'm not wearing them now, if that's what you're asking.
Oh, I wasn't, but it's good to know.
It's been a while. I was curious. I wanted to just see. It's not like I do it all the time. It's just every now and then.
What I'm curious about to know, Don, is the actual scenario when she caught you. Talk us through that actual scene. I had actually been wearing them. This is kind of graphic. Like I don't want to air my personal laundry. No pun intended. I mean, I'd been wearing them around the house, and she came over unexpectedly, and we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and DVR, quit laughing. And we were just sitting on the couch watching TV, and whatever. One thing leads to another, and I successfully contained her, but I guess my animal magnetism was just too much, and she started playing around, and she was like, "Hey, wait a minute." And that was that.
I've made up my mind if it counts for anything.
Yeah, okay. Eugenie, have you got your mind made up on this one?
Lie.
My thinking on this is that it's an. You know how DPR gets things from his personal life and imposes them on us.
True story. Wait, no, I'm not saying that story was true.
I was going to say, hang on, what? I'm saying lie. I'm saying lie.
Yeah,
so.
done.
I did not get dumped for it. No, it's a lie.
You didn't get dumped for it? Oh, I got it slightly wrong.
No, it is a lie. It is a lie.
Of course, I took it from my own personal life. I have to say, I would love to carry on. I've got lots more that we can do, but I'm acutely aware that we have the absolutely outstanding Dark Matter 2525 and Coctopus Prime waiting in the wings, desperate to get on. I would love to run this for another hour or so, but unfortunately I can't do it. It would be discourteous to them. So at this juncture, I have to say thank you to everyone that has contributed. Eugenie, as ever, absolutely outstanding, not only at lying, but also uncovering those that lie. Potholer, you're much better this year. And Don
Well, what are the
Exodus,
scores?
thank you
You haven't given us the
very
scores.
much indeed. The scores are these, and they have been sent to me by the scorekeeper, who's nameless. In last position, with -4, is Don Exodus. In second position,
Wait, what?
with +2, is Potholer. And in outright winning position, as ever, Eugenie Scott with +5. So,
Wow.
Eugenie, thank you very much indeed. You can take again the glory of being the best liar. I don't know what that does for the NCSE, but no, seriously,
Well,
thank you all very much indeed.
it
It's
was
been
great
great fun.
fun.
And
It
before
has.
you all go,
Great fun.
there are a number of things I would like to say, and I know that you would probably like to endorse these comments. Please, everyone, you know, it's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed it. And all we ask is that you make a donation to the charity that we're supporting, which is Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, MSF. All you have to do is go to the Magic Sandwich Show website. Any of the links down the right-hand side, you can click on Justgiving, First Giving, or PitchIn. You also got the opportunity to bid on the book. Let me get it out again. Stephen Fry's book, signed by him, which is on eBay. I haven't checked to see what the latest bid was. The last time I saw it was £10.50. The book is, and you can buy it off the shelf for £9, but this is signed by Stephen Fry, for goodness sake. So please donate. It is a very good cause. And
It is indeed.
on that note, could I invite our panelists to please endorse what a worthy cause it is. Eugenie first.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to do these benefits with you, DPR, because I really do think Doctors Without Borders is a fantastic organization. They are there when other people aren't, and they do exceedingly good work. So thank you for hosting this this benefit. And I do encourage the listeners to click on those donation links.
Right, and I know Médecins Sans Frontières as well from the time I spent with them, and these are guys who they not only give their time and fly around to some very difficult parts of the world and get away from the families and work and so on, but they're in danger a lot of the time. They're risking their lives to help others, and they do it completely impartially. They've got no hidden agenda whatsoever. This is the one organization that I would come out and support, which is why I'm here. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of charities that are somewhat questionable. I mean, this one's pretty straightforward. It really does good work. I think that was born in the position that I was born into through no goodwill or virtue of my own, and therefore you have an opportunity to pay it back. If you can do it, please donate. Just pay that goodwill forward. Help other people out. So.
Thank you very much, and honestly, thank you all. I've had a great deal of fun. I hope you have, and I hope that people who are watching it have enjoyed it as well.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you very much.
Now.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to have to end this broadcast. It will take me probably 2 or 3 minutes to rejig things so that everything is still broadcast on the website. During that time, please take a moment. If you enjoyed what we've done, take a couple of minutes. That's all it takes to make a donation. We'd be very grateful for that. But for now, as I say, I've got to end the show. Thank you all very much indeed.